Urban legends often deal with moral lessons of one kind or another, which is why they're popular among the young, who are still learning the rules of life. But according to our next story, cautionary tales about proper behavior can be outright terrifying.
This classic urban legend takes place on Lover's Lane, or any local spot where young couples park for a little romance at night. In this case, the couple has been dating for a while, and they want to get away from parental supervision. But the girl in question isn't too crazy about getting serious in her boyfriend's SUV. She expects something a little better. So she puts the brakes on the evening.
I told you, not in the car.
She turns off the radio and says she wants to go home.
I think we should go.
Okay.
The guy is naturally disappointed, but she stands firm. Then, when he goes to start up the truck, wouldn't you know it, they're out of gas.
I think we're out of gas. Honey, I'm sorry.
The girl is skeptical of this routine, but her boyfriend isn't kidding. The gas gauge reads empty. Now irritated, the girl insists he go find a gas station. They're pretty far from town, but the guy has no choice. He climbs out of the truck and tells her to lock up and sit tight. He'll be back shortly. She locks the doors, and the guy heads off in search of fuel. Miffed over the whole affair, the girl sits and waits for her date to return. While waiting, she dozes off. But she's awakened a short time later by a steady scratching sound on the roof of the truck. She can't see what it is, but looking up, she figures it's coming from the branch of the tree they're parked under. Ignoring the sound, she shuts her eyes and again falls asleep. It's not until morning that she's awakened again, this time by a police officer. He orders her out of the truck immediately. And when she climbs out, the cop hustles her away from the vehicle. She explains how she got stranded the night before, but when she looks back toward the truck, she's horrified. Her date's body hangs lifelessly from the tree. His throat has been slit. And the scratching she heard the night before was his fingernails scraping across the roof of the truck. Had she left the radio on last night, she would have learned of an escaped mental patient on the loose near Lover's Lane. A tale of terror, but is it fact or fable?
There are several legends about lovers' lanes. I don't think we know where this legend originated. It's probably one of the early legends along with the hook arm legend. It might indeed be a 1950s legend.
The reason for dating these legends to the 1950s stems from the attitude they have toward teenage romance.
These legends often tend to reflect a time in which sex was somehow more taboo than it was in the 60s and 70s and 80s. This is a legend in which you have a girl with a boy on an isolated road. For what purpose? It must be sexual. Ultimately, the boy pays the price, and the girl, in a sense, pays the price. It's a legend that accords very well with a value system in which sex was taboo, sex was forbidden for teenagers.
The earliest known record of the tale was found in 1964 at the University of Kansas. By the late 1970s, it had spread as far as Malaysia, and it comes in several variations.
In the boyfriend's death, in some instances, he's hanging right side up and his blood is dripping on the car. In some instances, he's hanging upside down and his fingernails are scratching on the car. There is no single correct version.
But however the victim is killed, the message remains constant.
Usually the couple is young. They're not a couple dating in their 30s. They're usually teenager age. It's saying you better be very careful. You better stay away from Lover's Lane.
This moral message and other elements of the legend all sound like it's made up. After all, Isn't the idea of the escaped lunatic just a cliché story device? A scare tactic used by protective parents? Well, at Atascadero State Hospital, a maximum security facility in Central California, there are patients who claim to have escaped from several psychiatric hospitals.
Took a bus to Portland, and then I took another bus to Seattle, SeaTac, Seattle Tacoma Airport, and bought a plane ticket to Anchorage.
But can mental patients really be as dangerous as the legend would have us believe?
I'm mentally disordered because I attack people. Like while I'm here, this man brought up the R-E-P-E word in a manipulative fashion in a bar. And so I broke a glass over his head and I caught 2 years with half time.
I don't want to hurt nobody. I don't want to spend my life in prison. I want to be a part of society. But when the tension's up too high, or my anxiety's up too high, then I start hearing voices. They tell me to turn around and hit somebody or do this or do that.
The patients committed to Atascadero are dangerous. And many of them are committed to us because of their dangerousness. So we have very rigid external security measures, fences, razor wires, towers, cameras. But our primary line of defense against escape is our staff and the relationships they have with the patients that are open, honest, and therapeutic.
Think about a flounder.
That's reassuring, to a point. But the reality of kidnappings and murders on Lover's Lane lends a powerful ring of truth to the legend. In 2002, the kidnapping of 2 girls from this rural hangout near Lancaster, California made national headlines and reinforced the urban legend.
I got the call that morning on August 1st at about 4 in the morning that this incident had occurred in the Quartz Hill area of Lancaster, that 2 young girls had been abducted at gunpoint. It's a semi-remote location where teenagers and young kids frequently go to talk and hang out and have a good time. This suspect drove up to that location. He went to one of the vehicles and he pulled the male and female occupants out of that vehicle at gunpoint.
The crime was detailed in this police report. Later that night, the women were rescued and the suspect was shot. But other true accounts don't have such clear endings. In 1969, a notorious serial killer known as the Zodiac may have given the urban legend its most potent dose of credibility. Around midnight on July 4th, a young couple was shot in Blue Rock Springs Park near Vallejo, California. It was a horrifying crime, but the killer's work had only begun.
About 2 miles from the Blue Rock Springs incident, there was another incident where a young couple was shot and killed on Lake Herman Road. Shortly after this homicide, a suspect who identified himself as the Zodiac took credit for the crimes.
Dozens of murders followed, most of them in secluded places frequented by young couples. And to this day, the danger still lurks.
At this time, the case is still open. The suspect has not been apprehended.
So, escaped lunatics and stalking killers on Lover's Lane really do exist. Does this mean the legend really happened?
The mythology of patients committed as criminally insane is either that they are some sort of superhuman monster or they are very cunning, like Hannibal Lecter. In fact, patients behave very much like the rest of us.
And in fact, the legend of the boyfriend's death is untrue. The effort it would take for a single person to hoist the body of the boyfriend over the truck would certainly draw the attention of the sleeping girl. Furthermore, the killer would not be around for the payoff, the girl's horrified reaction. And if such a grisly sight were ever found by the law, the world would have seen the police photos. And like the young woman in the legend, you would never forget it. Deadly dangers can await on Lover's Lane. But what about danger in your own bathroom?